at the beginning about sort of some of the big impacts that we're already seeing. I'm also going to give you a good overview of what was included in the legislation. And then we're actually going to get into the what does it really mean for me. I'm going to actually share some specific tools that you can use to figure out the rebates, the tax incentives, how that might apply to you, your community, or other people that you know. I want to start out with a little bit of a personal story, though, because this legislation is actually almost very personal to me. So as Anna shared, I have a degree in marketing and finance. My first job out of college was I got recruited to be in an analyst program at one of the big investment banks in Manhattan. And I got there and I really enjoyed the work. Actually, I found the work itself very challenging and interesting, but it didn't have purpose, the kind of purpose that I realized I wanted in my work. This was actually around the time of the Persian Gulf War. I started doing research and I got very enamored with renewable energy and the idea of energy independence for the United States and clean energy. So this was back in the 90s. I picked up and I left that job and I moved to California, go West young woman, to work in renewable energy. When I got there, though, renewable energy was incredibly expensive. It was moving very slowly. I did get involved in the industry and ended up working in it for years, as I still do now. But that is my personal story. And you'll see as we go and as I share some of the impacts of what we're seeing from the Act, how that ties into that. Wanted to just share that with you all. All right, so let's dive in and look at what is included in the bill. So there's 3 sections to it. We're going to be, or 3 subject areas. We're really going to be focusing on the climate area today. And this area put aside $370 billion to be spent over the next 10 years, with $60 billion of that for environmental justice. We're going to talk in a minute about, well, what does environmental justice mean? What does that look like? It estimates a 40% reduction in carbon emissions using 2005 as our base year. Now, one of the things that's very relevant to us here in Florida is there's all this good stuff in the bill, and we're going to be focusing on that. But to get the bill forward, there were fossil fuel leasing provisions added. And a lot of those provisions are for ocean acreage in the Gulf. So there are organizations in Florida working to watch that, push against it. One of them is Rethink Energy Florida. So if that is something you're interested in learning more about, you can look into the work that they're doing there. I did a little digging, and just to give you some perspective, the amount of lease that will be available will be equal under the Obama administration, but less than what was available under Trump. There's also whether this will actually be developed or not, but it was not a great thing that it was included. And again, we know what happened with the BP spill. And so this is something of big interest to those of us who live in the state, especially on the Gulf Coast. Oh, sorry. Okay, there are 2 other areas of the bill. One is health, and then another is taxes. So just to hit on those real quickly, again, we're not going to dive into them in detail today because we're going to be focusing on the climate aspects of it. But extended and expanded areas of the Affordable Care Act. It allows Medicare to negotiate certain drugs starting with 10 in 2026. It put a cap on insulin copays. And then there were some tax implications. They set a corporate minimum tax for billion-dollar companies. Currently, the IRS, it's estimated that they have issues collecting about $600 billion in taxes. And so this gives them the ability to do that. There's also a data point that 9 out of 10 phone calls to the IRS go unanswered. And then there's also a surcharge on corporate buybacks. Again, just to let you know that these were in it. If you're interested in this, there'll be other, venues that you can go and discover those details. So today's conversation, as I said, we're going to talk about some overarching themes. So the US using this legislation to make a bold shift, and that meaning an energy transition, also focusing on equity and environmental justice. And then the second part's going to be like, how do I get in on it? What's the money for US households? And how do I, as a member of our communities, participate in this energy transition and this systems change? Because we are all part of these bigger systems that need to be shifted. So an interesting thing about the US is that China has really led in the solar space. They make up 80% of the manufacturing stages of solar panels today, whereas the US has been really declining to the point where we only make up 1%. And yet there's this big trend that all of these countries, including ours, are looking to grow their renewable energy. And so we're going in the wrong direction while the need for this is increasing. So what's great is the bill passed in April of 2022. And very quickly, we saw, because of the 10-year horizon, commitments from companies going into battery factories, solar panels, and mining as well, to meet the targets to reduce greenhouse gases. So specifically in our area, there was just announced at the very beginning of this year, a $2.5 billion solar manufacturing expansion in Georgia. It's the largest ever investment in clean energy manufacturing in the US. And it will take that 1% and help us to continue to go up. And we're seeing these commitments throughout the country. What this means specifically here for us in Florida is, I'll get to that in a moment, actually. I wanted to talk about also the electric vehicle sector. We're already, again, it's only been 6 months. And by November, we were seeing multiple automakers announcing billions and billions of dollars in domestic EV manufacturing investment commitments, because to reach the requirements of the bill, which says that things that get tax incentives and other monies have to be manufactured in the United States. It's basically a big made in the US piece of legislation. And in fact, Europe's reaction has been, I've heard some experts say this is brilliant and amazing, and Europe should be doing this. And you've probably seen that a lot of European leaders are saying, we need to get in on this. And it's definitely getting a lot of attention from that perspective. But it really means that the United States is starting to lead again, which in this space and where this is going is really important. So here in Florida, we already have a lot of clean energy jobs, about 150,000. But this investment will bring even more here to the state. And what does this investment end up meaning beyond that? The expectation is it will clean our air up. It will also reach out to rural communities. And we're going to talk a bit about rural communities where you live that will be positively impacted. It will help with green affordable housing, and it will help with electric vehicles, which is some of what we're going to talk about in detail today. There's discounts up to $7,500, and they've even introduced a discount for used electric vehicles to help make that more affordable. Just a quick conversation about, or a point about, what it means to invest in environmental, in communities that really haven't had environmental justice before. A lot of the money is being channeled to areas that have brownfields, which are polluted sites, as well as areas that have higher than average fossil fuel currently employment, and expecting to look to shift that to clean energy employment. And you can see right now, as of October of last year, our state was getting $8 billion of the monies, and there will be more. They're working on how to allocate it. Okay, so lowering energy costs. The ways that this is going to be done is there's different categories. There's efficiency rebates. So you can look at things like, and we're going to get into the specifics of this, electric appliances, heat pumps. And so this will help a lot of low income. And I'm going to show you in the tool that gives you an idea of how much money you can get, that it depends on your income level, what you are eligible for. Household solar credits are another really exciting aspect of it. There was a 30% tax credit, and it was slated to decrease and disappear, but now it's being held. Community solar credits is really interesting. If you think about a community solar, it's like a community garden, but instead of having flowers or vegetables, it has, and fruits, it has renewable energy. Unfortunately, in Florida, we don't have these. The law is written here where basically only utilities can sell you energy and power, electricity. So we don't have this here. If you happen to reside elsewhere or have family that does, they can tap into community solar credits. And then another interesting thing, because I know some folks who've attended today are involved with their local government. There are grants to help states to put the latest energy codes into place, which is going to be really important because in order to electrify our homes and a lot of the appliances that we use, a lot of us need to upgrade our the electric systems in our homes and or build the correct ones going forward in new homes. So there's a lot of money for that as well. I've actually been speaking to people in governments here who are starting to, in Florida, who are starting to apply for these grants. Okay, so what areas now we're in the what about me, what does this mean to me component. So the incentive and rebates touch lots of different areas. It touches on, again, upgrading your electric panel. It can be washers, dryers, water heaters, your electric car, putting a charger in your home, batteries, renewable energy on your roof. So there's lots and lots of different areas that it touches, really looking at the whole system, like I said, that we as individual homeowners and communities pull from the system. How can we make it more efficient? How can we make it using better forms of energy? So one of the things I wanted to touch on is, before I go through some of the tools that will show you what money is available to you, is why do we want to switch to electric vehicles? When I do talks, I often get questions about, well, I don't have renewable energy on my roof, so does it even matter if I do it? So I wanted to share that even in states where the energy mix is heavily fossil fuel, all electric and even hybrid electric are very much better from a carbon emissions perspective. So this one is the national average. You can see that if you use gasoline, you're emitting this much carbon emissions into the air. It's about, I think it's 13,000, 14,000 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent. And if you go all electric, it's more like 2,000 and change, heading toward 3,000. The other thing is, if you are in the market for a car, if you buy a car today and a car, let's say, has a lifespan of 10 to 15 years. So that means day one, when you buy it, it's using gas. And on day, let's say 12, the last day of the 12th year, it's still using gasoline. But if you buy an electric vehicle, you plug it in today, you're getting this less carbon emissions, and we're working on making the grid even cleaner. So over time, your car is going to get cleaner. So that's the issue with buying gas cars now, because we're locked into it for so many years. And I wanted to share Florida. So this is Florida's numbers. And even though a lot of our mix is natural gas, we currently are about heading toward 5% solar. We have nuclear, which helps in terms of it being lowering the emissions. You can see here, if you have a all electric car and you plug it into your home, you're doing much better than if you were driving a gasoline car around. Okay, so what I wanted to do was hop over and actually take you through this great tool. There's an organization called Rewiring America, and they have created a great calculator, which I'm sure Anna can provide you with the link afterwards. I'm actually going to literally go over into that site to show you how to use it. And actually, Anna, if I ask somebody to throw their zip code or everyone to put their zip code into the chat, so I can use an actual zip code there. Can you see the chat and grab it? Oh, actually, I think I can.
You can.
So if anyone wants to put their zip codes in, Okay. All right, let's start with 54601. Actually, I'm going to start with one of the 3 3s because it looks like more people may be from that area. We'll do
3-3 is Southwest Florida, probably.
great. Okay, so 33957. I'm going to start with that one. Thank you so much. And I'm going to you have options to do whether you're a homeowner or a renter. So I'm going to start with a homeowner. I'm going to actually put $100,000 in as the annual income, filing joint, and 2 people. So then you hit calculate. And what this does on the top line is it tells you there are upfront discounts, or some of it, there are tax credits, and then their estimated savings per year. So you can see that given this situation, this household has access to tax credits, but not to upfront discounts. But if we drop the income to 75,000 and we recalculate, that's an income level. As I was saying earlier, there's environmental justice components to this. So there's money for everybody, but it is more focused on lower income households. So just to take us down with this example, so I'm going to stay with the 75,000 filing joint 2 people. And this is a great tool in that it shows you what the things are: electric panel, electric stove, and then an estimate of how much your upfront rebate could be, electric wiring. And as I showed you in the other slide, it gives you an idea of all the different things that are included in this. Heat pumps, clothing dryer, a heat pump, dryer. Heat pumps are incredibly efficient. And they actually have very high penetration in places like South Carolina. They're very good use, the heat pump air conditioners, in warmer areas. And the benefit to them is that they do both heating and cooling, but they're very good at cooling and they're very good at removing humidity. So it's a great choice for Florida. Very, very energy efficient. And then you can see the tax credits include things like battery storage, geothermal, electric panels, which I said is going to be important for people with older homes, both the electric vehicles and various other things. So this is a great tool to come into. You can play around, you can share it with other people in your community. It's a great way to educate people on what they have access to.
On a webinar.
Okay, can I just, sorry, I have like a little break right now and I'm like, there's just a lot happening, so.
Can you please mute your
Seeing
phone
your
who's
text, trying to
speaking?
Follow what's going on here.
It's not time sensitive. I just was.
Can you please mute?
So we're going to go back to take a look at some of the, sorry, hang on 1 second. We're going to go take a look at some of the specifics that I mentioned in there. So rooftop solar. So as I said, there's a 30% tax credit. And the great thing is if you happen to owe less than that amount on your federal taxes, you are able to carry it over to the next year. The other thing that changed is nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, any that could not use the tax credit before now can get a different type of payment. So if you are involved in your community and you've been wanting them to do that, they used to have to jump through some hoops and work with different providers that could get the money back to them. Now it will work directly. As I mentioned, there's a special program for farmers and small businesses, and a lot of Sanibel, Captiva, and some of Lee and Collier are eligible. As Anna mentioned, United Solar Neighbors recently opened one of their co-ops for your area. This is a really wonderful organization and site. I recommend, if you're interested in solar at all, just going there. They have wonderful educational information, and they are coming next month. So if you're really interested, you can attend to the ad and listen to their presentation. But they, what their concept is that they get groups of people, homeowners, to join together. You do an RFP process together and you choose one installer through that process. And so what that means is you get good pricing, you get the expertise of United Solar Neighbors, And in some cases, I know there have been neighbors and groups where some of the neighbors will be engineers or people who work in the industry. So if you're a little intimidated and this is the first time you're doing a purchase like this, it's a great way to jump into this and really feel a lot more comfortable with the process. Another thing I'd love to have in the chats is, if you could say yes or no, have people been seeing gas stoves mentioned in the news?
Yes, pretty much. It's been all over.
Right? So when I put this together originally, I was like, oh, you know what? No one's going to know about gas stoves. I've been speaking to a lot of people, especially in California, who are in this space, who work for municipalities who've really been working on the gas stove issue, especially because gas stoves are much more prevalent in California and New York. It has much less penetration here in Florida. So it sounds like everyone's seeing it. It's kind of taken on this life of its own, which is sort of bigger than life and a little outrageous, really. So there are discounts for gas stoves. The benefits to gas stoves, going from a gas stove to an induction, is really the best way to go, or a better electric. Is they're more energy efficient. It gives you better indoor air quality. You reduce your emissions, and they are safer, right? You don't have to worry about any benzene and other things that we're finding are leaking out of stoves even when you don't use them. And the interesting thing is, this data has been out since the 1970s. It's just something that hasn't really been, for various reasons and various, reasons, it's been pushed into the market, but now it's getting attention. And again, it's less of an issue in Florida. I know my first house when I moved here, that was built in the 2000s, did have a gas stove. I just moved into a house built in the 1980s and I have electric. So probably that houses built in like that 2000 area, when it was really, gas was really becoming a thing, have more of it. But something to know that this is an area that you can change in your home and improve your indoor air quality if that's, on your list of things that you want to work on. So sort of the takeaways, is it seeming that the US can start to take more of a leadership role in the global energy transition and remake our economy to line up things in transportation and energy production, really in the way that we would like to see it. There are triple benefits in this for individuals. There's money, potentially, better air quality in our home. I don't have anything in my home that would produce carbon monoxide. I have electric cars, I have an electric stove, and I actually think that's great. So very happy about that. And we also can participate in reducing emissions. The other thing too is we can support a just transition by letting people know who, maybe people who own rental units that lower income people live in, that they can get access to this money and start to transition those, and also help those people who tend to have higher energy bills and a higher energy burden. There's just a lot of ways that we can support a just transition by seeing that this money continues to go to the areas and the folks that need it most. All right, well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to taking questions.
Well, thank you, Holly. I'm going to start off with 2 just to get the ball rolling. Then if everybody wants to put their pictures on, then if you want to wave or put something in the chat, I'll try to moderate that and forward the questions, or just wave your hand and we'll call on you. But 2 questions come to mind that maybe our listeners would be interested in. One question that comes up is about the electric car vehicle, the rebates on electric vehicles, and which cars qualify, because many cars that aren't with a certain proportion of components produced in the US, even though they're electric, no longer qualify. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, so probably the best thing is I also have a link to a site that you can go in and look at by maker and by car, what the rebates are and what's available. So Anna, that might be the best way after this is I could give you the 3 links.
Yes, and we will send that out to everybody. If you could give
Yeah.
out those links. The other issue that I think might require clarification is that there are rebates and then there are direct rebates and then there are tax incentives. And rebates are more applicable to lower income people. It's based on a percentage of average median income in an area, which is why the calculator is so important. But the tax rebates are available to almost everybody. Is that true?
I mean,
And how
based
do you-
on,
And what's the difference between the ones that are administrated at the state level and the federal level?
okay, so the tool that I just showed you gives you an idea of the federal program. That's a great point that you bring up, Anna. So those are federal rebates. And then there are state, and then there are also city rebates. So for example, I wouldn't qualify for a rebate from the federal program, but a city near me, I happen to live right outside their boundary, but if I lived in it, they happen to offer one for putting your electric charger in about $1,000. So what it really means is, unfortunately, it does mean it's a little bit of work for people, but if you think about it, if you're getting thousands of dollars back, if you have to put an hour or two into going to a few websites and seeing what you qualify for, yeah, it's a matter of applying for the federal ones. That site has it. And then to make sure that you also check locally to make sure you're not leaving any money on the table that way. There are also databases I have that collect that, but none of them seem to be entirely comprehensive. It might be a matter of going to your own city or county and just checking to make sure that you're not over Googling my county, electric vehicle rebate.
Do we have any questions from the crowd? Bob?
Yeah, this is Bob. I was just this is kind of a nuance to add on to what Holly was talking about, but the tax credits, both for the EVs and then also if you do solar or battery storage, those are, if you don't have $7,500 in taxes that you owe in a given year, you can roll those credits over to a following year. So that so that's just an interesting nuance that you can get that credit over time.
Here's another question, and I would like everyone to just chime in. So since we do dedicate time for the discussion, that's why this is a workshop, not a lecture or a webinar. I had heard, and I think I'm going to put Julia, who's on with us, maybe to help you out, that when you put solar on the roof, some roof improvements can also be part of the credit, but I didn't understand how that worked. So if you're changing your roof at the time that you're doing the solar installation, not only are just the panels, but some of the work related to the roof might be eligible. Can you chime in on that? Or Julie, if you turn on your camera. Hi, sorry to put you on the spot on that. Could you talk to the audience about how that works? You'll have more of a chance in March to talk about the co-op, but that's something that people don't know, and it can become a tipping point for doing solar, right?
Yeah, the tax credit has been around for a while and has been stepping down. So we're really excited that the Inflation Reduction Act brought it back to 30% of the total cost. The eligibility of roofs under that tax credit had been in the past a gray area. And then about 2 years ago, it was clarified that it was not eligible. So if it is just a roof, even if you need roof improvements or replacement to install solar, it is not an eligible expense for the investment tax credit. The only roof material that would be eligible under that credit claim would be actual solar tiles. So they're really looking at the energy producing product at all. And there's an IRS frequently asked questions. I'll try to find that and drop that in the chat. But roofs are not eligible under that solar tax credit.
Thank you for that.
If there's just a different area just to talk about, because Anna, you and I spoke about this when you were looking to buy, or we were talking about the air conditioners and the heat pumps. So I reached out to, I know some folks who work in that space, like at large, a very large company here that does the distribution for all the United States. And they're saying that more and more manufacturers are creating heat pump options. So Carrier's one and a few others. Carrier's got a huge presence here as a manufacturer in Florida. So what's interesting is your contractors who come in your house may not yet be selling or talking about air pumps. They're not all, heat pumps. And so what's interesting is we have to keep creating that demand. Companies like the one that I was talking to are going to start training all the contractors they touch to help to move the system along, like I was saying. But we currently buy water heaters and our air conditioners directly from contractors. So it's really what they're selling us, and we tend to not know a lot about it. So it is good to be educated about and start to ask to help like pull that process all along.
I would chime in to say that unfortunately, because that industry is not up to date on the newest technology, they will not talk to you about things that they don't sell and install very easily. They will dissuade you heavily because they prefer to install and warranty equipment that they are comfortable with, and that you may, if you're dead set on moving forward, you may actually have to change from the person who's been servicing your units. And, there's a relationship there. They come every year, they clean your filters. It's very hard to move to a new company, but some of the old time guys, and I don't mean that in a generalist way, but they're not there yet on it. So you may have to research a company that is more comfortable with the new technology, because they will steer you away. They'll tell you, well, you can do a variable, unit, and you'll save just as much energy. And they're just talking out of the left side of their mouth. It's because they haven't done enough installations yet. So don't be dissuaded if your contractor is a little nervous. Get 2 or 3 different companies to come talk to you. If you have a large home that you're air conditioning, you're making a $9,000 investment in a unit. You might as well really kind of interview new companies and see who will offer you what. Is there a SEER requirement on the newer units, on the new air conditioning units, if you're not going with the heat pump?
I think it may be, we'd have to check. I think it may be that it's only heat pumps that are covered. I know it's a huge push to want to get heat pumps out into the market. So I don't remember seeing just a general, it looks like it's specifically for heat pump technology.
Do we have any other questions, or anybody else want to put on, turn on their camera and raise their hand?
Hello, Steve Wonderly here. I can't turn on my camera at the moment, but I do have a question. Is there anything that we need to do locally to ensure that the funds that Florida gets are appropriately spent on this?
That is such a great question, Steve. So I think that Steve actually is a recent member of a climate reality chapter that I run in another part of the state. And one of the things we just had a conversation about, because we have people in our group who've worked at the EPA, very high up at the EPA, and we are involved at the local level. We have a lot of folks who attend council members, committee meetings and of their city council and county councils. So we are going to be making that an objective this year, to keep an eye on making sure that this money doesn't get diverted at that level to some sort of building program or something else that it really wasn't intended for. So hopefully there will be good checks and balances in place, but I think having people who are educated on this and have heard what it's supposed to be spent on, really keeping an eye out, certainly helps. I don't know if you have any comment on that, Anna.
No. Janet, do you have a question? You turned your camera on, so.
I have a comment on that last question too, if when you get to it.
I'm just curious about the group that's organizing around this accountability, because trying to preempt some of the dissuading and naysayers. it's really important to have that. And I'd be really interested in any kind of loose structure that you're using for that. Just maybe on the side.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put my LinkedIn in the you can connect with me there. If you're not in that, then Anna, you feel free to give my contact information to people.
And I'm not connected to LinkedIn right now, but that would just be really helpful in terms of keeping the conversation going. I think it's an important part, but I also think for some people it's going to be absolutely essential.
Yep.
Are there other home improvements that are energy savings other than the appliances that work for the IRA? In other words, new insulation in your roof, new windows that are more energy. Does any of that fall under the IRA?
There is a category called weatherization. And to be honest, so it's defined as improvements that reduce the amount of energy needed to keep your home comfortable, including air sealing, ventilation, upgrades to insulation, doors, and windows. So it's not like as clearly, defined as like, I bought an electric car. So there's a lot of things that fall under it. But there is that category and those are listed underneath there.
Can we access that? Is that the same website that the
Yep.
Rewiring
If
America?
you go down the Rewiring America, there's a weatherization line item.
I think that is often the first step, because one thing is reducing your demand, but if you're just wasting it through the windows, a very practical first step is to weatherize your house. It also makes it more resilient to storms. Like, if you get low E glass, you not only absorb less heat, making your air conditioner work less, so you lower your bills, but you also end up with stronger new windows that are less likely to blow in. So overall, those are easy to capitalize when you want to in resale value. Equipment depreciates, but you can get a long way on new windows and doors in terms of resale. So that's a point to take into consideration.
It's such a good point. Again, because I get to talk to a lot of the sustainability leaders and managers, officers in the state. And one of them many years ago was saying how frustrated she was that she really wanted to do net zero buildings, but like, how do you do that with the existing housing stock? It's like way harder than even if you do stuff with new. So everything that you bring up, Anna, like each of us weatherizing our homes and like doing all the things we're talking about it, we help to take this existing buildings and help them lean toward much more efficiency, and we save money at the same time.
And
Yes,
I would.
Brett, you take yourself off of mute. There you go.
Sure. Hi, Anna. Nice to see you again. Holly, thanks for the fantastic presentation. I'm looking at the Rewiring America website right now, and I noticed that the tax credits all say available now, but the electrification rebates all say timeline late 2023. Do you know what the reason is for that? And basically when those might become available, how they're accessed?
Yeah, I don't have specific stuff for each of them, but I know that there's a lot of this, well, the money's there, how is it going to get disseminated? And so they're putting different organizations in place, aspects of, I know like the EPA just announced that they have a whole unit that's going to be specifically keeping an eye on the money that's getting put out for environmental justice. And so the same thing must be happening with the rebates. I don't know if somebody else has more precise timing, but my go-to has been to just keep going back and checking, since Rewiring America they are really entirely focused on this and entirely focused on helping homeowners. More so, they have CEOs that are members to kind of keep the momentum going, but it really is about helping individual people. So they would really be the go-to.
I think I can add in a little more nuance, but maybe not the specificity I would like, is that the tax credits come directly through the federal government. The rebates are being managed at the state level. So each state has to set up an administrative process for applying and disseminating the money. Remember, the rebates are only for lower income housing, or for low income households, sorry. And so we are reliant upon the DeSantis administration to pick a department to organize how you apply and how you get it back. And some states are more, let's say, enthusiastic about setting that up, and others are a little slower. So the money is there from the federal government to pass on to the states, but until the state develops a portal, the application process, and the way to receive the money, I think they have a mandate to do it during 2023, but it's all in the hands of state government to do the rebate piece.
Great,
Can
that's really
anybody else
helpful. Thank
confirm
you.
that? Julia, maybe, I don't know. I'm thinking you might be the other expert on the line with us, but I believe that is the holdup. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
there's also, I think just in general, just to add one thing before I see Bob had his hand raised, is this is, it just got passed in August. And like I said, we are seeing, I think, for the government, some pretty quick, or at least the companies and corporations are tapping into it pretty quickly. But I'm actually going to another training on what it's going to mean and how it's going to roll out next month. And it's sort of like they don't have the information yet. So I think a lot of what Anna said is spot on. And I just think it's going to take some time because it's a big project and program. So Bob, you had your hand raised?
Yes, I know we're focused kind of at the individual level of, how these legislation programs might impact us. But I want to go back to Steve's comment for anyone who was involved in, who is involved with their local municipality. In addition, we've been focusing on the Inflation Reduction Act. I was just reading this morning about incentives built into the bipartisan infrastructure bill that also passed last year. And there's also quite a bit of money for local, state, regional governments for energy efficiency and renewables. And for example, I was just looking at a neighboring city to where I live, Cape Coral, is eligible for over $200,000 worth of grants for energy efficiency and renewable projects. So that, if you're involved with your city and you want to look into that, I can try to find that too and also put it in the chat.
Thank you, Robert.
Any other questions? I have one more, maybe the last one, which maybe you can touch upon, but you had mentioned that nonprofit organizations and municipalities can now apply for these rebates, which has been a long-standing issue, is how, if you don't pay tax, how do you benefit from the rebate? Do you know more about how they get that money directly? Where do they apply?
Julia, it's in the renewable energy area. So Julia, are you comfortable giving more information?
Yes. So yeah, that was a game changer in this act, that, tax exempt entities can now benefit from what was the tax credit. So through a direct pay. That is assured. So nonprofits, municipalities, schools, all your local organizations can move forward planning that is definitely in place. The mechanics of how you apply for the rebate, for the direct pay, are not clear yet. And we do anticipate guidance on that from the Treasury Department by the beginning of Q2. So it is definitely in place. We've met with industry standards. It's just the matter of how. So we'll get that notification out to nonprofits by, you're not going to be filing this until the end of this year for 2024. But that also helps us leverage the rebate funding that we're going to see how that comes through. So a lot of nonprofits might want to install solar, and the savings are from their solar or from the cash rebate on what was the tax credit can now be used to leverage that. So many nonprofit organizations want to use that like a pay it forward fund, so they could be helping and be a source of directing the rebate money to their neighbors.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. So we're almost at the top of the hour. I'm going to try to wrap it up. The first thing I want to say is thank you to Holly for your presentation. And the second part is that we have Julia with us today, and she is our next speaker in March to talk about the co-op. So if you want to learn more about solar co-ops and about putting the benefits of solar on your roof, please join us next month on March 1st. She also has some other information sessions, one of which I believe is tonight, and you have that in the chat. You don't have to wait till March. You can continue your learning this evening with her. The co-op is doing several presentations through their partners in the region to get as many people to be interested in going solar in this on this round of the co-op. We're doing ours on March 1st, but spread the word, because this is a really amazing opportunity. And everyone, Julia, you can wave at everybody so that they see you. You'll be their next speaker. And lastly, I just want to share with you the Growing Climate Solutions website and the social media channels. Do join us as part of the conversation. If you're not receiving our newsletter, which we sent out on Monday, sign up at Growing Climate Solutions. We'll have a recap of this and links to this why and how. The why and how recordings, whether it's this one or ones in the past, are available at growingclimatesolutions.org. That we have a tab called resources, and all the material we put together, whether it's a newsletter or these why and hows, are available there. The recordings are also available. Follow us on social media. We want to grow that. Whether you are an active participant or just like every once in a while, it does help us out. We want to create a community of climate forward thinking people here. And the more people that join, the better the discussion, the further we get. And share it with your friends, because we do our best to reach new people each time. That's why, for those of you who've been here before, I make the introduction faster and faster, but I never want to miss somebody. Should somebody be new to our discussion, they should know about our organization. So tell your friends what you did today for lunch and what you've learned. And please join us in the future for this one and the future one, which will be Julia next month, and then Susan Tobbs about food waste in April, and possibly we may extend it into May. So with that, I say thank you to everybody for coming today. We'll end a bit shorter than usual. You'll receive tomorrow or so an email with the link to this recording and anything else that we might add from the chat, the links for the calculator and other such information. So if you didn't get a chance to jot it down today, you'll get an email saying thanks for participating, and that will be included. Any last comments? Well, thank you all.
Thank you. And it was so nice to see some of you I know and meeting many of you for the first time. So
very cool.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.